already starting to have issues, but it's a pleasant 30-something degrees on I-20 as I'm heading east. I get on here and I talk a little bit about I-4. I just finished listening to a YouTube video of inside Idaho, and it was talking about the case, and it was going over bit by bit on how the crime scene and how it was found. And it was being told by the individuals that acted and give that kind of interview without really knowing exactly what, who, where, and how things happened in that home. I believe that she convoluted the case from the very beginning, and she was able to not really give any good insight as to what happened. I mean, it seemed to me really interesting how wording is used when it comes to these cases. You know how she described that there was more blood than she had ever seen at a crime scene? That in itself tells you that A, she's never been to a crime scene that's been that bloody, or B, she was sensationalizing for the camera. Either way, I had a little disdain for Kathy Mabbitt. I really don't really care for her or her interview. I don't believe that we really got any kind of insight from her interview. I mean, it just seemed like a very scared woman in front of a camera that gave some insight that she really didn't know about or that she could talk on. So I don't know why they did that interview at the very beginning. But looking back on all that, the Inside Idaho on 2020 here on YouTube is really a piece by piece documentary on the case, and it's able to kind of walk you through it. There's many people that say, well, there's certain pieces that are missing, but that definitely ties everything together. And it was pretty interesting to hear exactly how the things were put together. One of the things that is said in that documentary that was interesting to me was the fact that when Brian applied for that internship at the Pullman Police Department, and once they got his name, I never thought of this, but they had his resume. They had everything about the guy. They had, where he had gone to college, where he had worked, all kinds of stuff. And I thought to myself, you know what? They pretty much had everything about him. His social, driver's license number, probably his driver's license with a copy of all the identifying information, because that's what that individual who interviewed him, I don't even know his name. I don't know a lot of these people by first name basis, but I was thinking to myself, they had a lot of information very early on based on the DNA and all the trail that led to Brian. So once they got the name, all they had to do was go back on the resume, because that guy that interviewed him, the chief, remembered Brian. Inside the video that I'm talking about, he was talking about Brian not being able to have fluid conversation. Do you know what that means? That means that what I'm doing right now, I'm able to have a fluid conversation, meaning that my thoughts and everything are flowing out naturally. He made it sound like Brian was very stoic. He was very one-dimensional, didn't really have a lot of fluid interaction with him, which meant that in his introspective interviewing skills, Brian wasn't capable of being in that position that they were looking for, and that's what he said. So I thought that was interesting too, because when you're listening to it from a news broadcast, and it's totally different than everything else you listen to on YouTube or whatever, wherever you hear this stuff, it's interesting. You actually have the individual that worked on the case speaking on their behalf, and basically stick to the facts of what would have been used in court, not all the other stuff that we get thrown out. They didn't talk about the latent shoe print. They talk about any of that, but they did talk about how the surviving roommates had, female. And to a lot of people, that doesn't mean a lot. It really doesn't. As we've seen over time, and we've heard over time, people really were not that insightful on what they should have done. Does that make them accomplices? It's based on how your perception is. One thing that they did play.
There are police reported ahead.
Alright, let me put this down a little bit. Where she said, something happened in our home and we don't know what. If we really take that statement into account, to us, we look at it in hindsight and we really see that there was a murder that took place because we knew exactly what was happening after the fact. If you see a masked individual in your home and you're going on texting your friend, not sure why they're not answering, calling, not sure why they're not answering.
There are police reported ahead.
Y'all hear that? Police reported ahead. I've already passed 2 of them. Anyways, there's something that happened in our home, and we don't know what. When you heard that, what did that mean to you? If any of you are watching this on replay, if you're watching it right now, what did that mean to you when you heard that? I know that many of us know exactly what the hell happened in that home, but if you take the roommate calling at that moment, calling 911, stating there's something that happened in our home and we don't know what. I mean, even as adults, if you're calling 911, many of the 911 calls that you hear, most of them don't have a lot of descriptive information. They might even just say, well, this person's not breathing, they look like they're passed out, they look like, there's blood around them, but I'm not sure what happened. very seldom do you hear them say, this person's been murdered. This person's been killed. This person looks like they've been stabbed. Most of the 911 calls that we have been prevalent to hear are not that descriptive. Granted, some of them are. Some of them do state exactly what we all see on the screen. Yes, the person is deceased. He's not moving. He's cold. Now, one thing I don't understand about the 911 operator.
There are police reported ahead.
Good Lord. I'm in a hot spot doing a live on YouTube. Ain't that some shit? Anyways, one thing about the 911 operator that I never understood, and I still won't understand it, is usually if you're calling in an unconscious person, how come the 911 call operator did not have one of the people that were calling in go check for a pulse? Go check and see if there's any sign of life. She didn't do any of that. She was more worried with their identifying information, where the call was coming from, who the call was about. She didn't ask them to check for a pulse. She didn't ask them to see what they saw, what was their perception of the situation. None of that. The 911 call operator, in my opinion, was crap. And there's the police right there. The 911 call operator was trash. And I'm not trying to bash people after the fact, but you know what? When you look back on this, it is exactly that. She was trash. She was more worried about them passing the phone around than whether the unconscious person was indeed alive or deceased. And you know, when you take that into account and you're really looking back on the case, I'm sorry I can't read what you wrote, PKC, but hopefully I'll be able to see it later on. But whenever you look back on this case, there's a lot of things not that make me wonder if they got the right person. It makes me wonder the inept ability for these people who were first responders on their ability to do their job correctly. There could have been a lot more found out at that point.
There's a lane closure ahead.
I don't know if you agree with that or if you don't. But I believe that the 911 call operator could have done more. She could have asked better questions. It sounded to me like a very frustrated person that was not very interested in finding out the details rather than just finding out the address. And maybe that's the protocol there. I don't know. But to me, that was trash. That was trash. And you know, as an officer, you get there and you believe that it's an unconscious person, and then you find all that blood, because in this 2020 special, you actually heard the officer say, this is a homicide. So the moment you heard him say that, it automatically shifted everything that we're stumbling upon. I'm having issues, obviously, or Wi-Fi issues, whatever. But I just wanted to get on here for a minute and talk about that because I'm going to do a long at a stationary point. Go watch it. It's called 2020 Inside Idaho. And let me know in the comments, or if you're watching this, comment as you see it. Let me know what you think about that documentary. Because the traffic's about to get wild up here. And as you heard us say, there's a lane closure. So let me let you see exactly what I see. If you've already seen that documentary, let me know if you think or it's not. Take off my glasses. It says last 911 call I made was a mess. Multiple operators, questions I couldn't answer. I'm headed east. I'm heading to Dallas, Fort Worth for the night, and then I'm going to try to make up an itinerary. I'm off until next Monday, so I'm just going to make it up as I go along. I think I'm going to League City at least once on this trip, either going or coming. I'm going to do the killing fields, so that is definitely on the plan. Even though the operator cut off anyone speaking of the person in the house and wanted information, it sounds like she still relayed information to LA. You're right. I mean, but I just think, had she said, can you check for a pulse? Is there any sign of life? Then instantly it could have changed to everyone needs to get out of the house, wait for the police to get there. You know what I mean? And it would have cleared up a lot more of those contamination and everything else that went along with that. Yeah, I'm heading east right now on I-20. So I will do more. I'm going to do a short later on. Any of you that watch the show Landman, I'm going to go by the Patch Cafe and show you exactly where it is and do a little short on it. So if you watch that show on Paramount, make sure that you look for the short, because I'm going to show you the Patch Cafe. Y'all have a wonderful day, and thank you so much for joining me. Once again, my name is 12 Gauge, and this is my channel, 12 Gauge Investigative. See you soon.